Okay, we are back with Romeo Lewis. Now, one of the parts of your life, Romeo, that is still tender to this day from our various conversations is that relationship with your mother, who has now passed. And I know that sharing your story can help someone else. We in the last segment we just started talking a bit about that, which was a good time to transition. So I thank you for being vulnerable to share in this moment. But walk us through what transpired that fractured the relationship, and just share how that impacted you.
Yeah, so it was about 18. I was a fabulous teenager, by the way. And at 18, I decided that, well, I didn't decide, it just happened. To my parents' views, I decided to be gay. But to be honest with you, I was even afraid of that word because of what was taught in my home, religiously, culturally.
Yep.
So it was something that I didn't want to associate with. And of course, I was bullied all the way through school because of my feminine tendencies. But it was just like, yeah. I did have I did have a little chutzpah, at times to push back. And it's like, oh yeah, you wouldn't want to start a war with me now. And so I was like, no.
Yeah.
It wasn't until high school that I started coming into my own, and I became very popular. And I just had great friends around me, people that, I didn't even think that they knew. Some of them knew or had,
thoughts, assumptions.
On that. But I felt very well connected to my peers in high school. And, and of course, I would date girls, but in my mind, dating girls is just going out with them and, you just hung around them and that's your girlfriend.
Yeah.
I was like 18 and I remember, and just to note, in Alberta, where I grew up, the drinking age is 18. So I went to my first nightclub, gay nightclub at 18.
Wow. And
it was one of my friends who was bisexual at the way. I didn't know, I found out later. And, the way she invited me, she said, I can get any man I want, She's like, I am so confident. And, she was the cat's meow back then. And then I haven't seen her since. She said, I can go to a gay club and pick up a man, no problem. And sure enough, we went, and it was a little bit like of a Hollywood story for me, because my first time in this big club called Flashbacks, and straight people went there too. It's just one of those places you go for good music.
Right.
And in Edmonton, it's either you're going to get a country bar or a gay club. Or, they had some black clubs then where you can hear some R&B and calypso. But, there was nothing too much outside of,
Right.
And of course, this very tall, gorgeous guy comes up to us. And I thought he was hitting on my friend. And of course, he's talking, because she gets the men, right? It's like, okay, sure, Tia, sure. Yeah, and not knowing he was asking about me.
Oh dear.
So she had him introduce us. And of course, he's going on about my beautiful eyes. I shouldn't be wearing glasses. He was such a charmer. And then he asked, if he could buy me a drink. And then he says, my friends own this nightclub, and I'd like to give you a tour. So he gave me a tour because they had their own, made their own beer on site. They had the vats because it was like a warehouse.
Yeah.
And then we went outside to have a cigarette. And of course, I wasn't smoking, but to be cool, I wasn't smoking that. Oh my God. I hope my daughter doesn't see this.
She's gonna learn a whole bunch of stuff.
And I went outside, and of course, we had a smoke, and then I got my first kiss.
Mm.
It's like, wow, just, yeah. So it's like we exchanged numbers. This is the pre-cell phone.
Yes.
So we got to get the house number.
Yes.
And just because he was much older, he was 35, by the way. I was 18.
Oh, wow.
But I mean, that was not a big draw for me because I've always been around older people.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so that turned into a relationship, and it was getting serious quite fast, and I wasn't ready for that.
Wow.
He wanted me to move in with him, and you know, so Edmonton is a very small community, and this guy, he was Hungarian, by the way, but very connected to the Black community, and specifically the Jamaican community.
Wow.
And he was also a DJ. So he played all the Black clubs, even the basement parties back in the day in Edmonton. And he invited me to one of these parties that he was going to play with. And I guess everybody saw me walking in with him. And then everybody in the community knows who he is. They respect him. It's like, oh, Romeos with, and also I was quite popular in Edmonton because I used to model as well at the time. So everyone knew me.
Yes.
And I guess that went back to my mother, and that was when it all just hell broke loose.
Yeah. So it was broken to her instead of you breaking it.
Yes. But she came to me, to be honest, and to be fair with her, she asked me, am I gay? And as I said, I didn't even know what was happening. I knew I had these feelings all these years. But again, the fear of knowing how they think about gay men and the derogative terms that they use. I didn't want to associate with that. And I denied it to my mother. I said, no. And she says, thank God, because, you know, this is where she said some really terrible words several times. And I think she knew. And I mean, in hindsight, I think a lot of parents, maybe not every, but a lot of parents know where their kids are going when it comes to their sexual orientation. You know, I wouldn't say all, but some have a good idea.
And they think that by not hearing it, it's therefore not happening. Yeah.
That's right. But this guy was persistent that he wanted me. And apparently she told me he called her and they had a talk.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And she says, you know, if I knew this, you were going to turn out this way, I should have aborted you.
Oh, no, she did not.
Yeah. And I mean, that was, again, one of those things that I think followed me to this present day. And it also solidified what I thought of what I've learned about being gay. It's bad. You're no use to society, right? Nothing ever good comes from you. And yeah, and so it was just, so I moved out and I was living with another mentor. She was, well, we call her Auntie. And I was living with her, and then, you know, for a couple of months, and then I know she would talk to my mother, and she says, you know, oh, Sunday, we're gonna go, Wayne Clark is in town, and he's having a traveling fashion show. We'll go there, and took me out for dinner. And at the end of the evening, she says, oh, I spoke to your mom a few days ago. And you're leaving to Toronto next week. Your ticket is already bought.
Wow.
And because of the current situation with all the rumors going on, you know, we feel it's the best place for you.
So were you still dating this other man at the
Oh,
time?
I'd broken up with him at
Okay,
that
okay,
when
okay.
I found out he spoke to my mom.
Oh, okay.
And he was still stalking me actually every time I went out.
Wow.
So yeah, it was just so it was so hurtful. But at the end, at the same time, it was because that was a rejection, right? It's just like the same thing as the pregnant teenager.
Yeah, send them away.
See the connection here now?
Yes.
The pregnant, send them away to the country.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they get sorted.
Yeah.
The
Wow.
rejection.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, there was other things that were said, and I think my first reaction is that she doesn't need it, and I can't unpack this now. I can't.
Yeah.
Couldn't unpack it. So I
Yeah.
came to Toronto and, you know, stayed with my sister. About 2 or 3 weeks in, I was homeless because we had a fight. She kicked me out, and now I was on the street. And the day that I got a job, I just finished that interview. And this was the Friday evening, and the Monday I was supposed to start. So I'm walking the street with my suitcase, having no idea, and looking at areas of where I could sleep. I remember coming into Toronto on the bus one year in '83, and I thought, oh, the Greyhound, and that's on Bay Street, which is like a few blocks south. I was working at Canada Trust at that time. When the permanent and the merger of Permanent and Canada Trust, and I would, yeah, just like Will Smith in that show.
Yeah.
Tidying in the bathroom, getting dressed, and I still changed my suits. Because I was a church boy back then, remember? Yeah, and so yeah, that's where the struggle came in, and just having been there, and sometimes in hindsight, it's like you must have been a very, but I think it was my belief in God that kept me, because it was only as I got older I thought, my God, I could have gone the other way into drugs, into you know, but I still had the fear of God. So even though I'm homeless, I better act right. God's gonna get you.
Yeah. Well, and it could have been you still had your mother in your ear around.
Yeah.
You know, your behavior in the street, no matter if you're living in it.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was so that was very hard. And of course, you know,
did she know that you were during this period that you were on the street?
Yeah, she did. Because she sent me to my sister. If I'm not with my sister, who else could I be with? Yeah, we had family, but I was not connected to them.
Yeah.
You know, I wouldn't have known. But I did end up living with one of my sister's friend, because we bumped into each other, and I told her my situation, and then that worked for a while, and then I was just so fed up with what was going on, and I decided that I'm going to move to the States. I'm going to Hollywood. Bought myself a ticket. It was a one-way ticket, I believe, to Los Angeles.
Well, all these years, I've never known any of this. My goodness.
I felt very connected to my homelessness.
Yeah.
You know, and then it was just like, well, I'd rather be homeless in LA than in Toronto.
Wow.
But I did do a lot of odd jobs there. Makeup. I was a makeup artist by then, and banking. And then it was this salon I was working at, and I think it was about 2 or 3 people got deported within a week or 10 days. And I was getting nervous. It's like, okay, this is month number 9 now. I better be leaving. And that's when I decided to move back to Toronto.
Wow.
And, you know, uh, I think that's when I called my mother, because I was just on the verge of, oh, I remember this one incident though, this one French lady, she was a French teacher. You know, we met in a restaurant and she said to me, "You are such a delightful young man. I would love to speak to your parents." And I said, "Well, they don't live here." And she says, and I think she did, I gave her my mom's number, and because my mom did say some strange lady phoned me to tell me how much of a good job I've done with you.
Mm.
So that must have happened. And yeah, because I mean, although I was desperate and down in the dumps, I still carried myself well.
Yeah.
I still projected respect and, you know, these.
As
No
true
one needs
West
to
Indian
know.
children should.
Yeah. There's a certain pride you carried yourself with, no matter what situation you
Yes.
were in.
Yes.
You know, I don't know what the new generation thinks of that now, but there was certain being Black and certainly being West Indian, there was a certain pride you carried yourself with. You know, you could be poor, but no one needs to know.
Amen.
You carried yourself with dignity.
Correct.
And you were also not representing yourself, you were representing your family.
That is correct.
And your culture.
Correct.
You know, and it was, I've heard a lot of little jabs, basically what the feedback that Monique gave about walking around with the bonnet hat and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I have to say, I consider what she's saying, and there's some truth to that. When you carry yourself with, you know, dignity, you want to, it's not even also for others, it's for yourself. When you look in your mirror, when you look in the mirror, like, I like what I'm seeing.
Yes.
You know, and even it goes back to, you know, the many years I spent in my career as a hairstylist, and the motto that the Cancer Society has, that look better, feel better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's so that, you know, you could be sick as a dog, but you put some effort into your appearance for you, not for anyone else.
That is correct.
Or to feel better. You walk into a hair salon chair as a hot mess. You know, your world is crashing. But you walk out, your hair is fabulous. The world needs to have a step back.
That's right. Exactly.
It shifts your attitude.
That is right. That is correct.
You know what I mean? And I mean, that was one of the easiest transitions that I mean, easier now than you know, what I'm taking on now in psychology.
Yeah. Yeah.
The depth of it. And it's just, yeah. So
how often did you keep in touch with your mom over all those years as you were?
It was infrequent. So now I had another sister who lived in Edmonton who was in Toronto, and she says, you know, I think it's time for you to come back. Because I think she knew, and she said, because we had a little closure, a conversation 5 years before she passed. And she says, I knew you were suffering. I knew things weren't right with you, but you had so much pride that you would never tell me that you need help.
Mm.
And I'm thinking, which parent would allow that to happen? Yeah. That's another story. But, you know, maybe I could just interpret that she respected my my own space and to get myself out of things. But you know? let me ask us a separate, let me dive into that. When she says, I knew you needed help, was she responding to your homelessness? Or was she responding to the fact that you were a gay man and she thought that was an issue? That was where you needed help? It was my homelessness. Okay. My lack of money or support. She knew that. Okay, good. Yeah, because she always knew that I was, yeah, I mean, so I came back to Toronto when my other sister, who was closer to at the time, I stayed with her for a few weeks. They set me up. I'd gotten a job, and her boyfriend at the time had helped me get a room to rent, and I was doing that, and I was getting back on my feet, and then I met a lot of my friends that I grew up with Edmonton. Everybody, it was just a mass exodus of Alberta, and they all landed in Toronto. And we decided that we were going to rent a house together.
Oh, wow.
And so that's how, my life started thriving and, getting better bit by bit, working at the bank, and then transitioned to hairstyling. Yeah. So, that's my journey. And one of the most, to date, pivotal point in my life is that my godmother, who's now passed, I think, there was such an amazing connection with her that the hurt and the pain that I had with my mother, although it was, I wouldn't say it was superficial. I was still trying to appease my mother in these years, because remember, I've gotten married, divorced, got involved with another woman, had a child, and, and I had to say that I really like these women. They, like even my ex now, we co-parent. I consider her one of my best friends. And it's such a turn because we were such arch enemies at the beginning of our separation. It's amazing now how we've come full circle, and we both kept our eyes on the prize, which was their daughter.
Yes.
So this journey, and I'm so very. Some people are so very intrigued. And they will ask me, well, you knew you were gay. Why did you enter these relationships? And my first wife, she knew because we both had boyfriends at the time when we met each other. And we both broke up with our boyfriends at the same time, the same week, actually. So I think that was a little bit of serendipitous. It just happens that way. We're both very vulnerable at the same time.
How old were you then?
I think I was 21, my first marriage. No, I was for sure no older than 20, maybe 22. And we were together, and the marriage didn't last very long. It was just months.
Oh, wow.
We were just best friends. And I still think of her often. But and also in hindsight, we weren't, not only is there the chronological age, but we didn't have the tools to handle each other's stuff.
Yeah.
We didn't have any tools to handle our own stuff, let alone each other's.
Right.
So that created some differences and yeah, not so good stuff. But
and how soon after was the next relationship?
4 years.
Okay.
4 years. There was, but what I would think, and it would be so easy for me to say that, still trying to appease my mother. I'm gonna get this right. Yeah. I'm going to date women until this gay gets out of me.
That's powerful.
And I was also very lost, because one of the major things that helped supported that part, that you can be straight, is the religious aspect of what that means and biblically. And it wasn't until I reconciled with that and my own journeys, like, why, and I've seen this, and I still unfortunately hear this to this day, when little children are praying to God to take them because this is who they are.
Mm-hmm.
It saddens me.
Yeah.
You know, like a 5-year-old have this feeling, and you might not understanding, but they're going through so much pain that they'd rather die.
Yeah.
You know, and I know for some people it's hard to understand, let alone deal with. You know what I mean? But yeah, I was one of those 25-year-olds that were saying those prayers.
Yeah. Wow.
You know, why me? How could this happen to me? Like, and how could he make me this way? And then tells me that, you know, I'm not worth saving. Everybody has salvation except for you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so there was a while in and out. I sort of hate is the strong word. I shunned religious people and religion altogether. You know, for those particular reasons.
Yeah.
You know, that came, you know, that comes and go when I hear certain situations, especially now with the residential children, of how organization is set up, religious organization is set up.
Yes.
You know, and I do understand, you know, why people are angry.
Yeah, but how did but you started talking about your godmother, and how did her influence happen?
Yeah.
How did that support you? She filled the gap, right?
She filled the gap. She was a very staunch Catholic, but I think she had much more spiritualism in her than religion. For some reason, she knew the hurt that I was feeling, and she just took me. She already had 5 kids, but she just took me in, and by then she started living in Canada full time. She's from Trinidad.
Okay.
And she just took me in, and as she would say to me, this is not my doing or your doing. This is God's doing, why we're connected so. You know, and she says, I will always be your godmother, whether I'm on this side or next. And I thought, wow, that, and how I interpret that to me is that I love you so much, we will never be separated.
Yeah.
And of course, I had to go to therapy after her death because I think I just lost it. And I remember my therapist telling me that the reason, and she stripped me, there's a term we use in psychology of stripping your clients, your patients. And sometimes it's done too quickly. I felt this therapist stripped me too quickly. She basically said, you know, the reason why you're mourning her so deeply is that the issues, she hid the pain that you were dealing with your mother. So now that's gone. That's why you're feeling the pain. You're really mourning your own mother and not your godmother. And I thought, how dare you? How dare you? How very dare you?
Yes.
Yeah, and it took me a couple of years to recover from that, actually.
Yeah.
That's why I know she stripped me a little too quickly.
Yes. Yeah.
But however, that's what really propelled me, actually. One of the reasons that propelled me that I needed to have a conversation with my mother. That's the 5 years having that. And it didn't go as well as I thought, that conversation, because here it was, I flew out for just 3 days. And I mean, which was a shock that I was only spending that amount of time, but I was also I'm running a salon. I was an educator flying out to some part of the States doing seminars and shows or whatever. So that was the only 3 days I had. And I was so shocked that I didn't get to speak my truth. I only heard hers. And her narrative was one of a victim. So it was like she was taking a position as a victim. So therefore, if I'm a victim, I couldn't obviously make you a victim too.
Yes.
So it was shunning responsibility.
And in that
I
conversation,
that
did that stop you from going, forget it? Did you just, could you, if you look back now and in hindsight, would you have forced the issue? Or
I forced it in the past. And I thought she was at a place because she had already, had cancer, and, I thought it would have been a little different. But every time I go to her for these conversations, I think it was going to be a little different. And this one wasn't any different, because she was a victim of, this kid and that kid, her own children, or she was a victim of my father, or a victim who were still married. She's a victim of just everybody. And it's just, I remember speaking to a friend who drove me to the airport, actually, to get on the plane to Edmonton. And I was at my wit's end. And I remember what she said to me. That's all she has. And that echoed in my ear, even up until now. That's all she has. She's doing exactly, working with all the tools that she has. She doesn't want to take responsibility. And this is her go-to. She's a victim. So therefore, a victim cannot victimize another person in her head.
What was the relationship with your father?
My father, growing up, he was always physically present, but not present in other ways, unless we were going to be disciplined. So he didn't have, we just heard from my mother what he wanted for us. And that was not good, because, he feels I'm spoiling you guys. And this is one of the things that she ropes us in, that I'm the savior here out of the two of us. Stick with me and your life's going to be beautiful. But my dad was a very passive man, especially being West Indian. And he let my mother rule the roost. Financially, he was there, although it might not have been enough. And I remember this one friend, I remember overhearing a conversation that one of my mother's friend was telling her. She says, he might not be as rich as you want him to be, but he's a man and he knows his responsibilities. But it was not, he was not a millionaire. It's not going to do. And, sadly, I think some of that must have poured into some of us. I can speak that for myself. When I think about partners now, that, it's this image of what my mother wanted. So, but the difference, but the difference is for me, and now I'm much more open than I've ever been, is that, you know what, when I'm making those 6 figures, you damn well better bring that 6 figures too. When you come
exactly.
So and it sounds so superficial, but as I get older, I'm much more open to people gifting me other talents than just their money, whether it's their time. But yes, you have to be able to be in a position to take care of yourself, and that's but somehow I recognize that a lot of the affection that my mother gave me, and to somewhat I can speak with my siblings too, is that that's how she made us feel loved, is by the gifting. It's by the money, the material things. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? If we're in the latest, and like, it's so funny that year that that time I was speaking to my mom, and I said, I was showing her pictures of how I take my daughter to high tea. She goes to all the best restaurant, and I said, Mom, that are the traditions that I still hold very dear as a child. And I passed it on to my daughter. And she was almost in tears. And she says, out of all the kids that I have, you're the only one that remembers that. And in my mind, this is, my inside voice, bingo, it took a gay man to see that. Hello.
Hello. Oh my God.
Appreciate high tea and fancy restaurant, but it
Oh my gosh.
yeah.
That's all. But when you look back now, if you would you do anything different now if you had, like, looking back on how the relationship sort of ended with her passing and you not really feeling that closure from her, or maybe you did?
I did feel the
How are you, because it sounds to me, and again, I'm not the psychologist, you are, it sounds to me that a lot of the weight of some of the things that either you experienced with her or through her still manifests itself somewhere in your today life. How are you managing through that? Are you
absolutely.
Like, do you recognize it and go, oh, I got to get after that because that's still something I need to work on?
Yeah, this is something that I think I'm in the perfect spot for this now. Why sometimes I think I'm in more pain than others, but I recognize it. I kept myself busy for all those years and being successful and drawing certain things, and it was just I think anger, hurt, rejection is great for achieving those things, because you basically block out, like, that's not going to serve me right now. I need to put that on the shelf because I need all these things happen. I have a daughter, I'm trying to create somewhat of a lifestyle that she would be proud of. But now it's like, you're right, I'm so much more aware of certain feelings and narratives and where it's coming from. And also to not necessarily verbatim, but for where those emotions,
Yes.
the emotions, that feeling of disappointing other people, where it comes from. And it's like, how about you're not perfect and you're not going to be everything that someone wants to be?
Yes.
But you're still lovable.
That's right.
And you have to, it's my responsibility to love myself, despite all the missteps and challenges and all the other stuff that I'm okay. Even when I was homeless, I still deserve to be loved.
That's right.
Even though I was ostracized, I was still worthy to be loved.
Yeah.
It's so yeah, those narratives still play out, but and I'm not going to fake it. It depends on the day. Sometimes it's easier to brush it off, because also too, it's so important for you, the materials you read, that can prop you up on those very weak moments and challenging moments, that you already have a rebuttal for those narratives.
That's right. I
remember my first year back in school, and during the lecture, as the prof was hitting on certain things, I was literally crying to the point where I felt I had to leave.
Wow.
Because they hit on so much nerve. And I'm sure that can happen at any point when I hear someone's story.
Yes.
But that's the beauty of it. And coming back to that pain itself, I hear it in other people's narrative. You know, sometimes we're not as raw with our stories.
Yes.
Some people have the gift of packaging it nicely, but you still can hear.
Yes.
The challenges and the hurt and the pain,
yes.
the need, the pretty bows.
That's right. That's right.
You know, and because you've gone through it and you're chewing it, like,
yeah,
you know, like even with my narrative, you know, some people could say that it's raw or it's just, you know, well packaged. You know, it's objective, but I think once you lived it,
yes,
you know, you will always recognize it.
That is correct. That is correct.
And I think that's the very important part of being discerning.
Yes. Well, you know what? I think that's a nice place to end, because I think, you know, I really appreciate that you were able to share that, because I think there's a lot of people who, whether it is, you know, coming out or whether it is, you know, recognizing you don't, the support, you're lacking that family support, whether it is, you know, being around people that you don't feel, you know, have your back, then to finding somebody who has your back.
Yeah.
And that you're able to say, you know what, despite all of that I went through, to find that person or persons that are like, this is where I have to keep my heart linked, because this is the person that's going to get me through, you know, and just be able to shake off, you know, again, I think to your point, you can't wipe away that sort of, those experiences, you know, when you're a child, especially, I could talk to some on another show, as a child, you go through stuff that people might be like, that's nothing, but that carries with you through your entire life. And it manifests itself in different places. I think the reason why I've been ultimately successful in my eyes, in my career, is stemming from stuff that happened as a kid, to defy stuff that happened as a kid. So I think you are very similar. So despite what people said about you, despite what your mother did to you, you still exceeded expectations. And you still can continue, because your journey's not done. You know?
Yeah.
So I would like to say thank you. I think you are so amazing, such a beautiful soul. You are my friend. I love you to death.
I love you.
Oh my goodness. If people wanted to connect with you, are you on Instagram or something like that?
I'm on Instagram and Facebook.
Nice.
And well, I think that's about it. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, what we'll do is I'll get get your handles, and I'll put them in the notes.
I don't even remember them, to be honest.
I will find them.
That's how old I am.
I will find them and add them for you. Okay. But this was fabulous. I thank you for being on the show, and I will see you when I am back in town.
Oh, love it. Love it.
All right. Thanks, Romeo.
Well, thank you.
Well, that is our show. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Romeo. I would love for you to come back, so please subscribe to Spotlight with Renee Holder so you don't miss an episode. And yes, please like the segment if you enjoyed it. Yep, that's a thumbs up below. And share this with your friends and family, and leave comments if you'd like. I'd love to hear from you. Well, it's been wonderful spending this time with you as always. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time here on Spotlight.